Today's video, the Second Amendment. All right, so the Second Amendment. I have a couple of things to say, my opinions, and you can disagree if you want.
I hate you.
But I want you to think about a few things, okay? First off, a well-regulated militia, comma, okay, a well-regulated militia. Now, what is a militia? A militia is of the people, right? A militia, by its definition, is the citizenry of a particular state, county, city, whatever. So it's the people. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right for the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it's saying, right there, it's laid out, right, that a militia is necessary for a free state, so the people must be armed so that when the time comes, they can operate as a militia for the security of their state. Now, does that mean that every individual needs to have a firearm? No, I don't believe that it does, and it doesn't say that. Let me read you something that might shed a little light on what the founders may have been thinking around the time of the ratification of the Constitution and the founding of our nation, right? In the year prior to drafting the Second Amendment, in Federalist Number 29, Alexander Hamilton wrote the following about organizing, disciplining, arming, and training of the militia as specified in the enumerated powers. To wit, if a well-regulated militia be the most natural defense of a free country, it ought certainly to be under the regulation and at the disposal of that body which is constituted the guardian of the national security, confiding the regulation of the militia to the direction of the national authority, but reserving to the states the authority of training the militia. A tolerable expertise in military movements is a business that requires time and practice. It is not a day or even a week that will suffice for the attainment of it. To oblige the great body of the yeomanry and of the other classes of citizens to be under arms for the purpose of going through military exercises and evolutions, as often as might be necessary to acquire the degree of perfection that would entitle them to the character of a well-regulated militia, would be a real grievance to the people, and a serious public inconvenience and loss. Little more can be reasonably aimed at, with respect to the people at large, than to have them properly armed and equipped, and in order to see that this not be neglected, it will be necessary to assemble them once or twice in the course of a year. Okay, this is Alexander Hamilton writing about a well-regulated militia a year prior to the drafting of the Second Amendment. On May 8th, 1792, Congress passed an act more effectually to provide for the national defense by establishing a uniform militia throughout the United States requiring, quote, each and every free, able-bodied white male citizen of the respective states, residents therein, who is or shall be of age of 18 years and under the age of 45 years, except as is herein after accepted, shall severally and respectively be enrolled in the militia and every citizen so enrolled and notified shall, within 6 months thereafter, provide himself with a good musket or flintlock, a sufficient bayonet and belt, 2 spare flints, and a knapsack, a pouch with a box therein to contain not less than 24 cartridges, suited to the bore of his musket or flintlock, each cartridge to contain a proper quantity of powder and ball, or with a good rifle, knapsack, shot pouch, and powder horn, 20 balls suited to the bore of his rifle, and a quarter pound of powder, and shall appear so armed, accoutred, and provided when called out to exercise or into service, except that when called out on company days to exercise only, he may appear without a knapsack. Now, if this doesn't tell you that what the Founding Fathers and the Congress thereof were thinking about when they put together the Second Amendment, of which there were many iterations before they settled on the final one, a well-regulated militia, get that? A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. Okay, the militia is necessary. Who are the militia? Well, each and every free, able-bodied white male citizen of the respective states, resident therein, who is or shall be of age of 18 years and under the age of 45 years. This is what they were thinking at the time. They weren't thinking that every man, woman, and child should have a firearm and carry it around with them at all times. They were thinking that they needed a militia. Every state needed a militia because they were concerned about having the federal government with a standing army that could be used by a tyrant to oppress the states. So they decided each state should have a militia, and they should be well trained, and they should have the proper equipment so that if something happens, they can call for the militias to form up and be of service to their country. So what I take from this is that people need training. Right? You can't perform the function of securing a free state if you are untrained, if you don't have the proper equipment, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're unskilled with firearms, if you're unknowledgeable in firearms. Okay, today we recognize that we have a standing army and we have a National Guard, but we don't require any longer that every white male of the proper age be a part of the militia. We allow for people to decide whether they want to participate or not. Now, you can promote the idea that they should be, that it's reasonable. Frankly, it's not reasonable for every person in this country, or even every male person in this country, to own a firearm. When I was in Marine Corps boot camp, there were several guys who washed out because they were incapable of meeting the minimum requirements of a rifleman. They were unable to score well enough to earn the title of Marine. Marines are 0311 riflemen, first and foremost. Have to be able to shoot, have to be able to match a minimum score to earn the title of Marine. So, not everybody is suited to firearms. Not everybody should have one. Not everybody's smart enough or educated enough or capable of handling or understanding a firearm. In my personal opinion, I believe that, well, let me put it this way. When I was about 12 years old, I wanted to go hunting with my father. I was not able to acquire a hunting license in the state of Michigan until I took a firearms safety class because I was under the age of 18. So in order to get a hunting license, I had to take a class on safety. Now, why did I have to do this? Why did the state require me to have training or education before they allowed me to go out in the commons and hunt around other people? Because they want to make sure that I understand the gravity of what I'm doing, so that I don't shoot another hunter, so that I don't fool around with a weapon and harm somebody, right? So in order to get a hunting license, which means that you can go out on public land and hunt and fire a firearm, a 12-year-old needed to go and take a class so that he understood. Now, of course, my father trained me in how to use a firearm, but the law dictated that for public safety, I needed to go and take a firearm safety course. And the NRA put that on. I went, I did my deal, get my license, and I could go hunting. That was really the purpose of the NRA back in those days, before they got taken over and turned into the lobbying arm of the gun and ammunition industry. Neither here nor there. Well, it is actually prescient, but not really what I'm trying to get across here. The point is that, in my personal opinion, I think that firearm owners should need to take a training course and pass a test before they are allowed to purchase a firearm. Plain and simple. And I'm not talking about any kind of registry. I'm not talking about registering firearms. I'm talking about registering you as a person who is allowed to have a firearm. Here in the state of Illinois, you have to get a firearms card. The firearms card is really just so that the state can check and make sure that you are not a felon or retarded, whatever, that you're mentally capable. It doesn't require you to register your firearm with the state police or anything like that. It requires you to spend money, is really what it really is. You're going to pay the tax, and you don't get any training for it, right? In my estimation, you should be required to get training. If you're going to pay a fee, you should get something out of it other than a card that says, now you can exercise your Second Amendment right. That, to me, is an irrational law. In my mind, people should take courses. Just think of all the people that would be employed in training, right? They can be NRA certified trainers, instructors. Okay? Got to understand how to load your weapon, how safety works, how to use that safety, the purpose of the safety, the various types of safeties, the way to carry if you're going to carry concealed or carry openly. I mean, should we just throw a pistol on a guy and let him walk around the streets with it hanging off his hip? Well, guess what? We used to do that. And guess what? Law enforcement in those western towns started deciding that it was dangerous to let people walk around with a sidearm. So when you come into my town, you're going to take that firearm over to the sheriff, check it in, do your business, and then leave town with your firearm, right? Remember those days? No, of course not. Because it's only in the movies, and rarely in the movies do they tell you how many cities there really were that prohibited the carrying of firearms within the city limits. A lot. And that's because they were making laws based on the reality, which is that idiots would come into town with firearms and get drunk and shoot the place up and kill people. Or themselves. Right? There's a reason. You know, if you look at the world with a moderate view of reality, then you can kind of get an idea of why things are the way they are, right? If you shut down the conversation on gun rights, gun regulations, then the people who want the regulations, as soon as they get the opportunity, they're going to make stupid regulations. If you have a conversation with those people, try and help them understand, then maybe when they have the opportunity, they won't make a stupid regulation, right? If you offer them a common sense regulation, maybe they would adopt that instead of the stupid regulation they have in their mind because they're ignorant of firearms. And I took an oath to defend the Constitution. I'm trying to defend the Constitution. I'm talking to you now in an effort to defend the Constitution. Because what you're doing is undermining the Constitution. I want you to think about these things.